And that was the most secret branch of Fort Detrick, and they worked on highly classified projects. And about that time, Olson was beginning to have second thoughts about his employment at Fort Detrick, and believe it or not, was seriously contemplating leaving his employment and retraining himself as a dentist. He was really fascinated with dental work. And, he was already a PhD, and he thought he could get through dental school fairly quickly. And I think he had his stomach full of MK Ultra and everything else at Detrick.
By all accounts, he was studious, he was dedicated, he was a good worker, he did what he was told. At some point, there were doubts, and we're gonna get to that in a minute, because at the end of the book, I am gonna have to give that away, unfortunately, Hank, so people understand what we're talking about here. But at some point, he attends a meeting at it's Deer Creek, I believe, right?
Deep Lake Creek.
Deep Lake Creek, and he gets dosed. Well, we find out later, not only with LSD, and they tried to cover this up as it was some kind of an experiment. They wanted to see how their own people would react under this truth serum, but they also added some other things. And we found out that later he was being interrogated because he was talking about things he wasn't supposed to talk about. Then Frank goes through a lot. I mean, this is so exciting to read how all this plays out. Hank, you do a great job writing this as a thriller, actually, to be honest. And he ends up taking a swan dive out of the 13th floor, allegedly 10th floor, of a New York hotel, right through the shade, right through the window, right through everything. And this set about, a 20 to 30-year cover-up on what happened to Frank Olson.
Mm-hmm. Well, his death, his alleged suicide took place on November 28th, 1953. And it was reported that he had been depressed and subsequently committed suicide. And nobody really asked any questions. His wife was baffled by it, and certainly knew that he hadn't been depressed. But she was a young homemaker with three children at that point in time, and just was overwhelmed. And as you pointed out, he went through two closed shades and a closed window at 2:30 in the morning with his underwear on a fairly brisk November night. And I'm not sure that she was given those facts. I think she was under the impression that he went through the window, but didn't have a lot of that additional knowledge. Actually, the family was told that they couldn't view the body because of severe lacerations on the face, but that turned out not to be true.
You think, the CIA, when you find out they have psychiatric facilities, they have medical facilities, they can control the police, as we found out in this case, because as the people were sniffing around, the police were doing what they were told. They were visited by CIA and all kinds of alphabet agencies, and the cover-up began almost immediately into defaming Frank Olson, into trying to pay off the family. This actually led, I believe, was it the 70s to Senate Bill 30, or Senate Agenda 3035, which was to pay off and give about $1.2 million to the Olson family so they wouldn't be looking into this anymore. What were they trying to hide?
Well, the only people that sensed they were trying to hide something at that point in time were the attorneys, who were pretty sharp, David Karras and David Radowski, who were very sharp and knew instinctively that both the White House and the CIA were trying to cover something up. What they didn't know. It was a strange situation in '75. The nation itself was absolutely shocked that the CIA would dose with LSD one of its own scientists. And at that point in time, it had been explained that the reason he was dosed was more or less just a lark. It was a fun thing that happened after dinner, and a group of CIA and Army people decided to dose 5 or 6 guys.
And he just had a bad trip, so they say.
But no, he really didn't have a bad trip, and But
that's what they said.
Well, that's what they said. Yeah, they said he had a bad trip. That the LSD triggered his depression, exacerbated it, and 9 days later he jumped through a window. And anybody that knows the effects of LSD know that 9 days after you're given a small amount of LSD, less than 100 mics, you're not going to have that kind of reaction.
Well, I know that by experience.
Well, I've spoken to a lot of people who know it by experience. But Olson, but the country was told this, so the country was sort of in shock, but they weren't given the details of Olson's death or why he had gone to New York, who he had seen in New York. And so they thought, okay, he took some LSD, he was depressed, and he died. But the lawyers who looked at the facts knew there was more to the story. But unfortunately, Mrs. Olson, Alice Olson, just was fed up with the story. She had had a rough number of years prior to finding out what the LSD part of her husband's death. And she had become a serious alcoholic and basically was fighting for her life and had just found out the week before she learned, in 75, she learned the LSD stuff about her husband had just been diagnosed with cancer. So there was just too much in front of her, too much on her plate, and she just couldn't handle it. So she took the money from Congress, and Congress, that's a pretty sad story, too. Congress initially offered about $1.2 million. I think it was $1.3 million. But then, in order to get that kind of money to sue the federal government, everybody in Congress has to vote for it. There can't be any holdouts. There can't be anybody that votes no. But there actually was one representative from California, John Rousselot, who refused to approve it. He was a John Bircher. Later on, he became a very sort of shadowy figure in the whole JFK assassination activities, and he held out for a number of weeks, and there was a compromise, and the Olsons ended up getting $750,000 for 25 years of lies and baloney from the government. And,
your case actually does link into the JFK assassination in a really kind of roundabout way, which we're going to get to here on the program. The people that did approve the payoff of the Olson family are very familiar names to my audience.
Right.
Vice President Nelson Rockefeller, Lyman Lemnitzer, who was in charge of Operation Northwoods, which was a planned false flag against this country. Thankfully, Kennedy didn't go along with it. We know what happened to him. Ronald Reagan was involved in this. And, of course, George Bush Sr., William Colby, who had some mysterious circumstances surrounding his death, former DCI, director of the CIA. These people all went along with it because there were some deep, dark, very dark secrets that they didn't want anyone to know. Of course, they always tell this is a matter of national security. Now, I want to let my audience know, Hank, that you paint the whole picture. You have the whole timeline. You've got all the witnesses. You build this and build this and build this throughout the book as a story. For the sake of radio, I've got to cut to the chase because I want people to know what happened to Frank. But then again, I want them to know that most of the book is about these experiments at Fort Detrick and with the CIA that they want to know about, and that we talk about on our program. What really happened with Frank is that he started talking about something called Project Span. We have limited time in this segment. Could you tell us what that was about? Well, I hear the music now. When we come back, tell us what that was about and why that was the thing that really killed Frank Olson and what his dosing was really about. It was an interrogation, folks, because he had talked about this project, dosing, poisoning the French in order to conduct an experiment on human guinea pigs. We'll be right back after this. Hank Albarelli is with us. The book is A Terrible Mistake. Stay tuned.